Some Native American tribes endured nights cold enough to kill without modern gear or heavy blankets. The ways they pulled it off remain surprising, and one detail is rarely talked about. What exactly happened out there in the dark? One answer hides in plain sight. Inside the animals they hunted, animal stomachs, bladders, and intestines became life-saving containers and clothing for Native American tribes facing brutal winters. They cleaned and dried these organs to create waterproof storage that could hold fat, oil, and water without leaking a single drop. It was like having nature's version of a sandwich bag, except it used to be someone's dinner plate. The cleaning process demanded incredible patience and skill. Every scrap of meat and tissue had to be scraped away using sharp stone tools. One wrong move with the scraper could tear the delicate organ wall and ruin hours of work. The organs were turned inside out and washed repeatedly in ice-cold streams. Fresh organs had to be processed immediately after an animal was killed. Waiting even a few hours would allow bacteria to start breaking down the tissue, making it useless for storage purposes. This meant the entire tribe would work together to process every useful part before it spoiled. Once properly dried, these organs became completely waterproof storage systems. A well-made stomach container could be filled with water, rolled around, and even stepped on without losing a drop. Think of it as the original tough luggage that came with its own built-in quality testing from Mother Nature. Intestines from large sea mammals like seals and walrus were carefully cleaned and sewn together to create waterproof coats that blocked wind and snow completely. These intestine coats were more effective than modern raincoats because they were naturally designed to keep liquids from passing through. Creating intestine clothing required master-level sewing skills. The intestines had to be inflated like balloons to check for tiny holes that would ruin the waterproofing. Tribes developed specific stitching techniques that made the seams stronger than the intestine material itself. Hollowed-out stomachs also served as portable thermoses for carrying hot liquids during travel. The thick organ walls provided natural insulation that kept broth or tea warm for hours. A traveler could fill a stomach container in the morning and still have warm drinks available at day's end. When a container finally wore out from use, nothing was wasted. The old material could be cut into strips for repairs, used as patches, or even eaten during extreme food shortage. These organic containers were basically the Swiss Army knife of survival gear. Different animals provided containers with different qualities. Caribou stomachs held several gallons for entire families. Seal bladders were smaller but incredibly tough. Fish swim bladders were perfect for storing precious items like bone needles or small tools that couldn't be lost. But having perfect containers meant nothing if you couldn't keep warm inside your shelter, which required mastering an entirely different kind of heat management. Outdoor fires and heated rocks created heating systems that warmed shelters without the deadly risks of indoor flames. Tribes built large fires outside and heated stones in the flames, then carried the hot rocks into their shelters where they slowly released warmth throughout the night. It was like having a space heater that didn't need electricity and wouldn't burn down your house if you accidentally kicked it. Indoor fires created serious problems that outdoor heating solved completely. Smoke inside shelters could cause poisoning or breathing problems that would be fatal during winter survival situations. Indoor flames also consumed the oxygen that people needed to breathe. The stone selection process required expert knowledge about different rock types. River rocks were extremely dangerous because they often contained trapped water that would expand when heated, causing the rocks to explode like grenades. Nobody wanted their heating system to double as a rock-throwing machine. Granite worked well for heating because it was dense and held heat for long periods. Volcanic rocks were also good choices because they had been formed under high heat and were less likely to crack. The heating process took several hours of careful attention. They dug shallow pits inside their shelters and lined them with sand or small stones to hold the heated rocks. These pits were usually 1 to 2 feet deep, just the right depth to contain the heat while keeping it close enough to warm people sleeping above. Think of it as installing underfloor heating using nothing but shovels and hot rocks. Sand or hides placed over the heated stones prevented direct contact that could cause serious burns while still allowing heat to pass through. The covering materials had to be thick enough for safety, but thin enough to allow heat transfer. Moving hot stones safely required special tools that tribes crafted specifically for this purpose. Wooden tongs made from green branches could grip stones without burning. Leather wraps protected hands from heat while allowing secure gripping. Handling glowing hot rocks was like playing the world's most dangerous version of hot potato. Bedding and sleeping areas were arranged around the heated stone pits to maximize warmth for everyone in the shelter. Families positioned their most vulnerable members, like small children and elderly relatives, in the warmest spots closest to the heat sources. The stone heating system provided steady, consistent warmth that lasted much longer than fires. As stones cooled slowly throughout the night, they released heat at a comfortable rate without the temperature swings from fires burning high and then dying down. The whole system required teamwork, planning, and careful execution, but it kept entire communities warm through the coldest nights. However, the real mastery came in learning how to make heat portable and move it exactly where it was needed most urgently. Stone boiling and heated sand created portable heat sources that could be moved wherever warmth was needed most. Tribes heated small, smooth river stones in fires and dropped them into containers filled with water, bringing liquids to a rolling boil without putting containers directly over flames. It was like having a slow cooker that required a physics degree and nerves of steel to operate without melting your dinner bowl. The stone boiling technique solved cooking problems that couldn't be handled any other way. Metal pots didn't exist, and most organic containers would burn or melt if placed directly over fires. Water could be heated to any temperature by adding hot stones, and boiling water could cook almost any type of food safely. Stone selection for boiling required even more care than stones used for heating shelters. Boiling stones had to be perfectly smooth to avoid damaging containers. They needed to be small enough to handle easily, but large enough to transfer significant amounts of heat to water quickly. Getting the stone temperature exactly right took years of experience to master. Stones that were too hot would make water boil so violently that it would splash everywhere, wasting precious liquid. Managing boiling stones was like being a prehistoric chef who had to cook with controlled explosions. Heated sand wrapped in hide pouches created perfect hand and foot warmers that could be shaped to fit body contours exactly. Sand heated up faster than stones, but also cooled down more quickly, making it ideal for short-term warming needs like thawing frozen fingers or warming feet before sleep. The sand used for warming had to be very fine and completely clean. Coarse sand or sand mixed with pebbles created hot spots that could burn skin even through protective wrappings. Hot sand pouches were basically the original hand warmers that came with a built-in timer. Boiling stones could be reused for heating sleeping areas after they had cooled from cooking duties. The multiple-use approach meant that energy spent heating stones provided maximum benefit for different needs. Heated stones dropped into water-filled bladders or hide containers created thermal bottles that stayed warm for hours. It was like having a hot water bottle with its own built-in heating element that never needed batteries or electricity. Stones covered with ash or bark and wrapped in thick furs could provide gentle heat for 6 to 8 hours instead of cooling completely within 2 or 3 hours. The ash or bark acted as insulation while protecting bedding materials from direct contact with hot stones. Complex stone management systems allowed tribes to maintain multiple heat sources throughout the night. They would start with stones heated to different temperatures, so as the hottest ones cooled down, medium temperature stones would still be providing heat. The whole portable heat system required planning, timing, and coordination, but provided reliable warmth that could be moved wherever it was needed most. Yet all the external heating in the world couldn't match the power of turning your own body into a heat generator from within. Raw fat and fresh blood became internal heating fuel that kept Native American tribes warm from the inside out during brutal winter conditions. They consumed chunks of raw caribou or seal fat to slow digestion and help their bodies generate sustained internal heat for hours. It was like eating a slow-burning furnace that happened to taste like the inside of an icebox. The science behind fat consumption for internal heating actually makes perfect sense. Fat contains more than twice the calories per gram compared to bread, vegetables, or lean meat. When the body breaks down fat during digestion, it produces internal heat as a natural byproduct. Raw fat required even more energy to digest than cooked fat, which meant the body had to work harder and generate more internal heat to process it. This extra work translated directly into additional warmth that helped maintain core body temperature during extreme cold exposure. The The fat had to come from healthy animals that were killed in cold conditions. Different types of animal fat provided different advantages for internal heating. Whale blubber was incredibly rich in calories and could provide heat for many hours. Seal fat was easier to digest. Choosing the right fat for internal heating was like selecting premium fuel for a high-performance engine. Fresh animal blood mixed with warm broth provided immediate energy, hydration, and heat retention during bitter cold conditions. Blood contained sugars and proteins that the body could process quickly for immediate energy, plus iron that helped improve circulation. The blood had to be consumed quickly after an animal was killed before it could clot or become contaminated. Fresh blood was like nature's version of an energy drink, except it actually worked and didn't come with a sugar crash later. Raw bone marrow eaten immediately after kills provided fast access fat and energy that could be converted to body heat almost instantly. Bone marrow is almost pure fat, making it one of the most calorie-dense foods available anywhere in nature. The timing of marrow consumption was critical for both safety and effectiveness. Fresh marrow went from being soft and easy to eat to thick and difficult to digest within hours. Fresh marrow went from being like nature's butter to nature's candle wax pretty quickly. Cold, uncooked meat was eaten deliberately to conserve fuel while letting the body do the work of warming food internally. This strategy saved precious firewood for heating shelters rather than cooking every meal. Raw meat provided complete proteins that the body needed for maintaining muscle mass and generating heat efficiently. Cooking meat destroys some nutritional value, so eating it raw ensures maximum benefit from limited food supplies. The whole raw food approach required every calorie to provide maximum heating and nutritional benefit because food supplies were often severely limited. But generating internal heat was only half the battle. The real challenge was learning to harness the very thing that seemed most threatening. Snow transformed from a deadly enemy into a powerful survival ally when Native American tribes learned to use its insulating and protective properties. They packed snow tightly around their shelters to create insulation barriers that blocked wind and held warmth inside their living spaces. It was like wrapping your house in the world's coldest blanket that somehow made everything warmer inside. The insulating power of snow depends entirely on how it's used and prepared. Loose, fluffy snow traps air between individual snowflakes, creating excellent insulation. Packed snow creates solid barriers that stay in place while still maintaining excellent insulating properties. The packing technique required understanding different snow conditions and how they behaved under pressure. Wet snow packed differently than dry snow, and temperature affected how well snow would stick together. Working with snow was like trying to build with construction material that had a mind of its own and kept trying to melt or blow away. Tribes developed special tools for packing snow efficiently around shelters. Wooden paddles, flat stones, and even specially shaped pieces of bone were used to compress snow into solid walls that would stay in place through storms. Emergency snow pit shelters could be dug quickly to provide immediate protection from wind and falling snow. Pine branches and animal hides laid at the bottom of snow pits prevented direct contact with snow that would quickly drain body heat away. The design had to account for drainage, ventilation, and heat retention all at the same time. Snow pit construction was like digging your own custom-sized survival cave that came with built-in climate control. Snow storage systems preserved meat and fat naturally by maintaining consistent temperatures just below freezing. This kept food fresh without freezing it completely solid, making it much easier to access and consume when needed. Location selection for snow storage was crucial for maintaining proper temperatures. Areas that received direct sunlight would warm up and potentially spoil stored food. Choosing the right snow storage location was like picking the perfect spot in nature's walk-in freezer. Windbreak walls shaped from packed snow controlled airflow around campsites and prevented heat loss during the night. These barriers didn't just block wind, they created protected microclimates that could be several degrees warmer. The structures had to be strong enough to withstand storms while being designed to improve local climate conditions. Snow could also be shaped into reflective surfaces that directed sunlight toward living areas during the day. Understanding how snow behaved under different conditions allowed tribes to predict what techniques would work best, but even perfect shelter construction couldn't prevent the constant battle against moisture and decay that threatened to destroy the very materials keeping everyone alive. Smoke-curing clothes and bedding with wood smoke kept survival gear dry, functional, and free from dangerous mold that could destroy critical materials. Tribes hung clothing and hid above low fires or specially built smoke pits to drive out moisture that could freeze solid during the night. It was like having a prehistoric dry cleaner that made everything smell like a campfire instead of weird chemicals. Wet clothing and freezing temperatures could kill people faster than almost any other survival mistake. Wet materials lost all their insulating properties and actually conducted heat away from the body instead of trapping it for warmth. The smoke curing process required building specific types of fires that produced thick smoke without generating too much heat. Different types of wood produced smoke with different beneficial properties. Hardwoods like oak and hickory created dense smoke that was excellent for removing moisture from materials. Choosing the right wood for smoking was like selecting the perfect seasoning for your survival gear. Bedding materials needed regular smoke treatment because they were in direct contact with bodies for 8 hours every night. Mold and mildew were serious threats that could destroy bedding and cause respiratory problems. Regular smoke treatments were the most effective weapon against this hidden threat. Mold prevention was like having an invisible enemy that would destroy your survival gear from the inside if you didn't fight it constantly. Cedar smoke was especially valuable because it contained natural compounds that insects and rodents found absolutely repulsive. This protected stored clothing, bedding, and food supplies from damage by pests that could ruin critical survival materials. The cedar smoking technique required careful control of concentration and exposure time. Cedar smoke was like creating an invisible force field around your gear that kept unwanted visitors away. Regular re-smoking throughout winter maintained the effectiveness of clothing and bedding while preventing the gradual buildup of moisture and odors. The frequency of treatments depended on weather conditions and activity levels. The smoking process also provided opportunities for inspecting and repairing clothing and bedding. Smoking sessions often became community activities that brought tribal members together during long winter months. The community aspect made necessary work more enjoyable while strengthening social bonds. Some tribes built elaborate smoking structures that could handle large amounts of clothing and bedding simultaneously, but having perfectly maintained gear was meaningless if you couldn't survive the most dangerous hours of all. Those long, dark stretches when the cold became most deadly and fires were too dangerous to maintain. Sleeping through freezing nights without continuous indoor fires required carefully coordinated systems that kept people alive until sunrise. Native American tribes assigned rotating overnight shifts to tend coals, rotate warm stones, and monitor sleeping tribe members for signs of dangerous temperature drops. It was like having a night security team where the guards protected everyone from freezing to death instead of keeping out burglars. The shift system ensured that critical heating elements never failed completely during the most dangerous nighttime hours when body temperatures naturally dropped. Night shift workers monitored the breathing and movement of sleeping community members and rotated heated stones before they cooled. The responsibilities were serious because mistakes could mean people wouldn't wake up in the morning. Being on night shift was like being a combination security guard, maintenance worker, and medical monitor all rolled into one job. Ground heating systems created using fire pits, dug earlier in the day and filled with hot stones or coals, provided steady warmth that lasted through the night without constant maintenance. The technique required advanced planning, but provided consistent warmth that didn't need attention during sleeping hours. Heated ground systems were like installing underfloor heating using nothing but shovels, rocks, and fire. Covering heated pits involved layering different materials to control heat release and prevent direct contact that could cause burns. Communal sleeping arrangements with multiple people sharing body heat under thick furs maximized warmth without using additional fuel or resources. Multiple bodies generated much more heat than individuals could produce alone, creating warm microclimates under shared bedding. Positioning for shared body heat required specific arrangements that balanced warmth distribution with comfort for extended sleep periods. Shared sleeping provided safety benefits beyond just warmth generation, allowing people to monitor each other's breathing during sleep. Circulation maintenance through controlled movement of fingers and toes under bedding prevented frostbite in extremities without requiring people to get up and expose themselves to cold air. Maintaining circulation was like doing yoga exercises under blankets while trying not to wake up your sleeping partners. Every position, every shared resource, and every movement had to be managed carefully to ensure everyone survived until morning. The psychological aspects of group sleeping were just as important as the physical warmth benefits. The sounds of other people breathing and moving provided constant reassurance that everyone was alive and healthy throughout the night. These sophisticated sleeping strategies represented generations of accumulated knowledge about surviving in conditions that would kill unprepared people within hours. Survival wasn't about individual toughness or heroic actions, but about communities working together with carefully developed systems that turned the harshest environment on Earth into a place where families could not just survive, but thrive through the longest winters.